Well, joining me now from Sheffield is Shaista Aziz. She worked for Oxfam between 2004 and 2008, including in Haiti during the relief campaign there. Thank you very much indeed, Shaista, for joining us here on BBC
Hi,
News.
good afternoon.
First of all, if you could just start off by telling us about your experience of the culture at Oxfam when it comes to this whole area of safeguarding.
Well, I did spend 5 years working for Oxfam, but altogether I've spent 15 years working in the aid sector. And I think it's really important to point out that this isn't just about Oxfam. It's not just about one aid organisation. There is a culture of bullying, of racism, of misogyny, of all the things that we're hearing about in relation to Oxfam that cuts across the sector. And the aid industry itself has been under the spotlight for decades. If you look at the UN, for example, there's been multiple accusations against people who've worked for the UN in relation to sexual harassment and abuse. And these types of behaviours are very prevalent in societies around the world. So why would they not be prevalent inside organisations such as the aid sector? I think for too long there's been tinted glasses in terms of how people want to view the aid sector, and it's because there's a whole notion that the aid industry can only do good, and therefore only do-gooding people want to come and work there. Now, of course, there are lots of good people that work in the sector that do important work, but that does not mean that we can deny that these cultures exist, and they need to urgently be rooted out. I worked in Haiti. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. It's devastating, the level of poverty there. And when I worked there, which was pre-earthquake, I was absolutely stunned by how people were being forced to live. But what you saw there was an aid industry that is very much removed from the people. There are aid workers living in compounds. They're driving around in four-wheel drives, and they're living a type of lifestyle that is completely the opposite ends of how people are living. So I think it's really essential that we do acknowledge some of the good work the sector does, but we also need to then be able to be honest and critique it and hold it to account.
You say a lot of very interesting things there. What is an eye-opener is the way in which the report says that Oxfam was warned about what was going on but chose to ignore it. It essentially chose its reputation over the values that it should have stood up for.
Well, I think it's shameful, and I think the Charity Commission report is long overdue. We know it's taken more than a year for this report to come out, and it's damning what it's saying. Basically, it's saying that the governance structures of an institution, a great British institution, has failed, and there's no accountability for these failures. And one more time, this isn't just about Oxfam. It's really important that we understand this. There is a culture that cuts through the aid sector, and it needs to be held to account. In the past year, since these allegations have surfaced, the likes of Save the Children, for example, have also had allegations that they've had to be able to respond to. But what we're seeing is a lack of accountability. Now, if the trustees, the very people who are supposed to keep checks and balances of an organisation, have failed to do their job, they've failed to listen to victims and survivors, they've failed to hold management to account, this is not acceptable. And we also need to understand that these NGOs have huge amounts of power. Vast amounts of money comes into these organisations. Money is swirling around. And so we need accountability, first and foremost, for the victims and survivors. And by the way, there are still plenty of people who are not willing to come forward because they have not been listened to. As the Charity Commission has said today, they've been ignored, they've not been believed. And in particular, it's women from the global south, the poor women, black women, women with no agency, who are the main victims of things that have been going on. And I find it beyond horrific that the accusations that have come out are about underage girls being brought for sex. Now, if you did that in Europe, if you did that anywhere else in the world, there would be a criminal investigation. And I do think that what we now need to see is the likes of Oxfam and indeed other organisations taking responsibility for what's going on. And where there is a criminal case to answer to, they need to send the information to the authorities, including the police, and they need to investigate these very serious accusations.
Shaista Aziz, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Shaista Aziz.